Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of this Menat guide. I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 and I'm thankful for you to coming by to see part 2. I would like to start by addressing Menat'S V skills in this video. So, Menat'S V skills are very important to her game plan, and I feel like specifically in my playstyle, I am someone that uses V skill 1 for pretty much 99% of matchups, when the 1% being Abigail that I use V skill 2 for. But we'll touch on V skill 2 in a second. Why do I love V skill 1 so much? Well, I feel like V skill 1 has so many options and so many things that it gives her. It gives her so many different ways to play. So, for example, it gives her a good combo ender. So I'll show you over here. Stand light kick. Well, let me set Ryu to not block first, right? Stand light kick into reflect is so good, and not only that, right, it also works with stand light kick into crouch reflect. And with the new buff to her orb crouch reflect, which I covered in another video on my channel, you can see that it now launches higher and gives her more options to get a setup or a counter hit. A setup or a combo, which is so good for her. Now, not only is it a good combo tool, right? And I'm just going through the combo side of it. But as you can see here, I'm gonna set Ryu to do a fireball against me. If I do reflect, I can reflect the fireball back at him, and I will, if I time this correctly, send the projectile back at him as if I had thrown it, and that is so good against fireball characters. Now I'm going to do something here in a second. I'm going to show you quickly. If I show my V timer, my V gauge to normal, and I'm going to quickly waste my V trigger, and I absorb a fireball or crouch absorb a fireball, you see how much V meter gain I get from absorbing the fireballs. So Menat gets a lot of access with her V skill to anti-fireball tools, which makes a lot of matchups that the opponent relies on their fireballs, such as Ryu, Sagat, Guile, a lot trickier for them. V skill 1 gives you so many options because of that. So we spoke about it as a combo tool, an anti-projectile tool. So what else can V skill 1 offer you? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to show you right now. I'm just going to set this back to normal. Action recordings, action playback settings. I'm gonna set Ryu to jump at me, and I'm gonna use crouch V skill, which you can see can be used as an anti-air. Now, crouch V skill is very, very good as an anti-air, and I feel like it's a very situational anti-air, so it's not something that you're gonna see used a whole lot. It is really good, and as you can see here, right, as if I crouch V skill anti-air, I did it too early, but if I crouch V skill anti-air, I get a follow-up, so I get a lot of damage potentially from anti-airing a jump in, which I wouldn't necessarily get. Now the disadvantages to crouch V skill is 14 frames of startup compared to other anti-airs which are a lot faster, right? I'll cover that in the anti-air section of this guide, but I'm just giving you the examples. 14 frames of startup, so it is quite slow as an anti-air, and it means you have to be extremely ready to anti-air. Whereas, I feel like if you do use it, right, the reward is quite high. As you saw there, I got 215 damage, 330 stun off an anti-air, which a lot of characters in this game do not get off a simple anti-air. So it gives V skill 1 gives Menat an access to so much more, and I feel like it helps. It's such a core part of her game plan because she builds so much V meter from using it, and also when she gets this V meter, she gets access to her V triggers, which V trigger 1 is such a core part of her game plan. So let me show you another part of V skill 1 that makes it so good. So if I set Ryu over here to guard everything, and I throw out my orb, I get the ability to build V meter on block safely and recall, which makes it so good. And I'm going to show you just how much V meter. So I'm going to once again put my V gauge to normal, waste my V trigger, and I'm gonna do the same thing again. Sorry. And you see I get reasonably good V meter gain for a safe block string. Also, another really good way to use V skill 1 is in the sense where you want to activate V trigger, because you can activate V trigger on hit or a block with V skill 1, like so. And that means that you have a really good activation route with V skill 1. Now, I really like V skill 1 because you get the ability to combo off lights with V skill 1. And for me, I feel like because her current combos require you to use meter, otherwise V skill 1 gives you the ability to do things like this. The only inconsistency I find with V skill 1, and this is a problem with Orbless, is that it causes some of your regular B&Ds to whiff due to the lack of range. So Orbless V skill has a little bit less range than V skill 1 with Orb does, but it's really good as well, and I'm going to show you what you can do. So say for example, Ryu throws a fireball at me. So let me set Ryu back into playback recording number 3. I can do this and punish his fireball, which what I did there was I did V skill 1 standing, absorbed the fireball, and then cancelled my V skill 1 into explosion, or I could do recall or CA, and got that special move to come out, which then punished Ryu. That gives Menat so many good anti-fireball again options, and a good way to absorb projectiles and make sure that her opponent can't close space. Because often what you'll find is projectile players, or players who have projectiles, like to do something like this. And they like to close space, right? Actually, let me re-record and I'm going to show you. So a slow fireball, and then they jump in, because if they think if you reflect, that they can get the punish on your recovery frame. So if I set Ryu over here to record, to do number 4, right? And I didn't even jump in with a button, but you can see if he didn't walk forward, he could have jumped over, he could have blocked, he could have done whatever, right? So I'm going to stand full screen. You see he could have got a jump in. Whereas if I stand full screen, I can do that. I can do something like that. And that's really good. Then I get the ability to anti-air. It cancels the recovery frames of my V skill 1 absorb, and it's so good against projectile zoners. So that's another good pro of using V skill 1 in my opinion. Right, I'm gonna now go over here now and use V skill 2. And in my opinion, V skill 2 is not as good. I know Sako and Ahose, another 2 of the strong Japanese Menats, think very, very highly of this V skill. And they use it maybe even more than V skill 1. But for me personally, I don't like what I have to give up with V skill 1, with V skill 2. So we spoke earlier about V skill 1 allowing you to combo off lights. However, with V skill 2, you can see that didn't combo. I'm going to try another light, didn't work. Maybe this light, no. So you can see that you lose something important with V skill 2. But what does that mean? So why would you ever use this? Well, you do actually get a pretty good confirmed meterless hit from further away with your medium buttons, like your crouch medium punch. At this range, hitting crouch medium punch into stand reflect V skill 1 would whiff. However, at this range, you can see it combos, and it's still good V meter gain. So it's something that you would use. Also, I feel like you give up your anti-air option. So if I set Ryu to jump at me again, and I try to do something similar to what I did earlier with crouch V skill reflect, which anti-aired, you can see that doesn't work at all. Even if I do it early, no. If I do it, oh, it may have worked there, but I think that was a complete fluke, to be fair. So I'm going to try and do it reflective, like, oh, no, too slow. V skill 2 has 19 frames of start, which makes it quite slow and not so viable as like an anti-air option like V skill 1. So again, you're seeing you're losing the versatility options there. The last thing I really want to touch on with V-Skill 2 is that I personally hate that you give up your anti-projectile tools. But then this is what makes it matchup specific. So you would probably, I've seen people use it in matchups where you don't have a projectile to deal with. But in matchups like Ryu and Sagat and Guile, I feel like V-Skill 2 is unusable due to the fact that you cannot go through projectiles. So you see, like, I'd have to do it extremely early, almost preemptive, to negate a fireball, but then I don't get any V meter gain for that. So it negates one hit of a fireball, but what happens if I turn off my V meter gain? This is only orb, by the way. If I try to do this orbless, that doesn't work. I just get hit out. So you can see another reason why V-Skill 2 is not great against projectile. You only get one hit of a projectile, of nullifying a projectile in V-Skill 2, and you have to do it really early. So at ranges like, so let's say we're standing at mid-range, I'm not going to be able to reactively do that and nullify the projectile, which makes it very unviable for a match, despite the ability to do it full screen. That's why I feel like I prefer V-Skill 1 personally. Now, you might completely prefer V-Skill 2, and that's completely fine. It's all down to player preference at the day. I just thought that I would show you some of the pros and cons. And honestly, V-Skill 2 does have its pros as well. So as I said, it's great for characters where there's no projectile to deal with, such as Abigail. The only thing you have to accept is that you lose your light confirms, but that's not too important against Abigail. V-Skill 2, aside from that, can be very negative on block. So I'm going to try and get this at max distance block. Like at very max distance, I get it to be -5, which is not ideal. Means some characters can punish with 5-frame medium or CA in some cases, if they have a fast CA. But I do get some really good recall pressure. So you see that was +3. Or if I do it from here, +18. The only thing is a little bit interruptible if the orb is too far from me, which again, it's not so much a problem that V-Skill 1 has. I know it sounds like I'm being really negative about V-Skill 2, but I'm just giving you my perceptions of the overall V-Skill. And that's how I think Menat'S V-Skills kind of line up. I would like to say as well that I think V-Skill 1 has great usage as a pressure tool. So I think I've covered that already. So I would say that unless I'm missing anything with the V-Skills, and I didn't want to go into them with V-Trigger yet. You can also cancel V-Trigger 2 into V-Skill 2 into V-Trigger, and it works just the same as it would otherwise, right? That stuff is all great. Let's go back to this. You can cancel. Works for both V-Triggers. And not just that, you can do this for crouch V-Skill as well. So it's not a case where it's just the stand V-Skill. You can do that on both. I would say overall, I would pick V-Skill 1 for most matchups. Even matchups where some characters don't have a fireball. The only matchup I really use V-Skill 2 for is Abigail and perhaps Poison. But even then, I think having a 3-frame check against Poison into a V-Skill is really good. So that's my views on the V-Skill. I hope you guys understand that, and we're going to move on. Okay guys, so for this part now, I want us to look at her Menat'S and her neutral. So this specifically for me is the anti-airs and dash checks part. So we've already covered her normals, orb and orbless, special moves, unique attack, critical art, V-Skills. We're going to try and put this stuff together and formulate a neutral. So we know that Menat is a character that likes to play a long distance game or a zoning game, right? You can see that her normals, as we showed before, good distance, wants to stay away from you, right? Now we have to ask ourselves, how do our opponents approach us? How do they fight back? Now, they're not going to whiff punish Menat's normals because they don't have lingering hurt boxes that they can whiff punish with her orb, right? They have to jump and dash to approach us. So we need to be ready for both options, because the jump and dash game in this game is so strong. And for some characters, there's an extra layer where they can potentially get in with one of the tools that they have. So Cammy can dive kick, Urien can chariot tackle or knee drop, Zeku can run, Laura can command dash. There's so many characters that have options that can go against just standard dash checks and anti-airs. So for this reason, we need to try and get our mind around how to at least check dashes and anti-airs, and then when we have those down, we can start looking at matchup specifics. So Zeku. The reason why I selected Zeku for this is because I feel like Zeku has one of the best jumps in the game for crossing up and staying in front. Zeku is one of the best characters in that regard because it's so tricky to see. And to practice this, you're going to want to have that ability to know when to anti-air cross-ups and when to anti-air in front, because Menat doesn't have anti-airs that cover completely the both. So as you can see here, Crouch Fierce is the first anti-air we're going to look at, and it's good for covering in front, right? But as you can see, it's slow, 9 frames of startup, and it's got a weak hitbox to cross-up jump into, like you saw there. It's got a weak hitbox to cross-up jump into, and again, Zeku has one of the best cross-ups in the game. So that's a pro and a con of using Crouch Fierce as an anti-air. It has a good diagonal hurtbox, but it's not good against protecting the back of her head. And it's 9 frames, so it's not the slowest. It's kind of traditional for a Crouch Fierce to be about that much. So we use Crouch Fierce sparingly as Menat players to anti-air. Now let's look at Stand Heavy Kick, because we did discuss this a bit earlier. Stand Heavy Kick is quite good at anti-airing far jumps, but it may not necessarily be the best at anti-airing cross-ups. And again, a similar problem to Stand Heavy Crouch Fierce, and this anti-air is a bit slower. So you have to press this either really early to cover close jumps, or you need to use this only for far jumps, because it's not great for cross-ups and it's quite slow, 13 frames, right? Let me just double check that. Stand Heavy Kick, 11 frames, sorry. See, I gave you guys misinformation. So 11 frames, right? That's how fast this is. Let's look at maybe Crouch V skill. Now these are all still her orbed anti-airs. Ooh, Crouch V skill, quite slow as an anti-air, right? So Crouch V skill is 14 frames of startup, which makes it so that if you're not anti-airing early, it's very hard to anti-air. So maybe we think, okay, cool, maybe Crouch V skill isn't as viable unless we're completely really ready and we know they're not going to cross up. Because if you know they're going to cross up, you see Crouch V skill get stuffed by like good jump cross-ups like Zeku's medium kick. He doesn't have a hitbox behind the head. So maybe now EXO throw. EXO throw is great for covering the front. Let's see if it's good for cross-up. No, the invincibility that we spoke about earlier, where it's not invincible till frame 5, fully invincible, comes into play when you're trying to anti-air cross-ups, because you have to late anti-air cross-ups. You have to do a cross-cut, which is almost like an autocorrect DP, right? You need to therefore find a different anti-air to do with cross-ups, and this is where we have to use our minds. We have to think, how are we going to deal with such a pesky cross-up? What are we going to do against Zeku and his pesky cross-ups? Well, we can do this. Anti-air jab. Anti-air jump back jab. This anti-air is good for stopping cross-ups, because the others aren't great, don't have great hitboxes, or are not invincible enough to cover good cross-ups. So you can see we can do it late. We'll do it as late as possible. And you can see it's working really consistently. However, this is the weakness of anti-air crouch jab, right? Anti-air jump back jab. It does 40 damage and 70 stun. And you can see that you're consistently giving up screen positioning because you're going backwards. You're taking yourself closer towards the corner, which is where you ultimately will lose as a Menat player. You don't want to be in the corner. So maybe we can find something else that will cover cross-ups. So let's again look at cross-up jumping from Zeku. Was it this one? Right. Maybe, we can dash under jump in. But dashing is quite unreliable, I would say, because it's something that you have to do as a hard read. If he does a jump in that stays in front, then you're gonna get hit and you're gonna eat a lot of damage. So you need to be able to identify the fact that they're gonna cross up and dash under. So where would we use this mainly? Let's say that Zeku's trying to cross me up in the corner, right? Let's say Zeku is trying to get me into the corner. So I'm gonna try and, well, I'm gonna have to dash early. Oh, I got out. But as you see there, because of the way he auto-corrected, Menat didn't move, and I just ended up getting the block. So I have to do this really early, which is a big con, because that's not really reactable in a game. Let's see if I do it again. See, no dash, just block. So dashing can be quite good, but at the same time it's risky because, again, you have to do it really early. She has a slow dash. What about slide? Maybe you just get out of there completely. You slide under the jump ins, right? It has a good low hurt box, and it will probably avoid a lot of things. So let's see if we can get slide to work. Oh, again, we're seeing a similar problem where if you don't, unless you do the slide early, you're gonna end up auto-correcting to crouch medium kick. So you need to do your slide almost preemptively and hope it doesn't autocorrect, or else you're in a lot of trouble. So again, it's working somewhat consistently, but we've seen it before that it has had its problems. Oh, again, this is good though, because it's starting to show you guys that there are good answers for this stuff. So I want you guys to really try and put your hats on for this. Be aware of what could happen if you do it late. Like you saw, I got that crouch medium kick the one time, but out of maybe 15 tries, I got it right maybe 14 of them. So it is quite reliable. And that's what I'm trying to show you guys here by doing these drills, is that you can start to realize that Menat's anti-airs are actually quite situational. And sometimes you won't get damage off an anti-air, it will get you out of the situation. But you would take something like that where you dash out or slide out of the corner, because then you put your opponent in the corner and you don't have to block or eat a jump in, and you reset back to neutral where you win and your opponent's in an unfavorable screen position. So these little things are so good for Menat. And again, we show that how much of a puzzle character she is, where for most characters, 1 or 2 options for anti-airing and they don't really have to think too much. Whereas with Menat, we've shown 6-7 options against aerial approaches, but we have to be very selective and awake when using them. She's a very complex character. We knew what we signed up for when we picked Menat. So let's reflect. We have crouch V skill, we have crouch heavy punch, we've got stand heavy kick, we have jump back jab, we have slide, we have dash. We have 6 options so far against jump ins, which are really, they each have their pros, they each have their cons, but you know, we have to use them situationally, right? We have to be very aware when we use Menat. That's a part of playing her, and that's a part of why we like using Menat. So let's now try something else. Let's try to look for dashes, and we'll see what our best options are against stopping dashes. So let's set Zeku to do dash and medium punch, so that in case we late check, or let's say we try to check their dash with a tech throw, right? We'll be counter hit, like so, if we late react and we try to tech as if we were in a game and we thought they were going to dash throw us. So this way we know we're checking dashes properly. So what are our best options? Well, I personally like to use crouch jab, because for me, crouch jab, or being in a crouching position, helps me to react better. And we did speak about range, right? Crouch jab has good range. So I like to use crouch jab as a way to deal with anti-airs, because I feel as if crouch jab is the easiest. It's 4 frames, so it's relatively quick. Not as fast as stand light kick, but it's quick and has enough range that allows me to check a dash reliably, right? So I like crouch jab for checking dashes. The next thing about crouch jab that makes it so good, and something that we can use, is that it has minimal recovery. So if Zeku decides that he's gonna stop his dash and jump at us, we're gonna try, and we're gonna show now. So let's say Zeku, we put on 2 and 4, right? And we're gonna check dashes and jumps. So we're gonna press this. You see, I'm gonna just keep pressing jab, pressing crouch jab. Oh, look, I checked the dash. I'm gonna keep checking this. I anti-ed. So we're gonna keep using crouch jab as a way to deal with the neutral. And this isn't easy at all. This is one of the hardest things to train in this game, in my opinion. This is one of the absolute hardest things to train in this game. So don't worry if it looks a bit like this at the start, because it's fine. But you're gonna want to try and find normals that allow you to press on the ground while still being able to reactively anti-air and check. So this is to check the dash. We're pressing this. We're not even trying to react. We're just trying to press this to make our lives as easy as possible while still being able to react to the jab. So you see I anti-aired it. I did the jab, anti-aired there. I'm just looking for both. So check the dash, anti-air the jump. Check the dash. Didn't check the dash that time. And you want to be able to consistently do these. So what I would recommend if you want to train this is do that exercise, and when you get them both, anti-air 10 successive jump hits and check 10 consecutive dashes, then you know you kind of got it done, and you look for it in a game, because it's very different in game and training mode, but you need to be able to train your mind to start thinking this way. So this is a very important exercise in my opinion. And you see, it's like, it's not the easiest thing to do. Even when I'm looking for it, there's still times where I'm not able to pick up on it. And I'm glad I'm failing this much, because I'm showing you guys how hard it is to do and how much work you need to do to be able to get this down. It's hard to do. But what my point is to this exercise is I'm trying to show you guys that you need to try and find buttons that will allow you to check for these things on the ground, and still, like dashes and approaches, like maybe if he decided to do a run, for example, while still being able to react and anti-air with crouch fierce. Now Zeku is one of the harder options to test this on. Maybe you'd want to test this on Ryu, where his options are literally dash and jump, and then include a character like Zeku, where his jump is a little bit lower and harder to anti-air, but then he has these other options as well. And then you progressively start to improve and try these against other characters, and maybe then you'd use it against Laura with her command dash, because she has a dash, a command dash, and a jump. And you try and react to all of these different things, and it will help you to train your reactions a little bit. So that's my personal advice on how to train that stuff, and how to structure neutral. I don't know if it's as helpful to some of you. Maybe you think it's too much work and effort. But some Menat players, when they're just starting off, have a big habit of thinking that her entire neutral is literally just this. And you can see there the risk that comes with it. You get jumped in on. So while this may cover the dash, if they do decide to jump at any point, you're going to get a lot of damage. So you need to find buttons that you can use to cover both. Even stand medium punch. See, like stand medium punch isn't the best option, but it still helps you to recover in time to anti-air it up if you do it early enough, like so. But you don't react in time to check the dash. You see, it's really difficult. See, so you need to try as many different buttons, and I've shown you crouch jab. Maybe you like crouch medium punch. Crouch medium punch though, because it's 7 frames, I feel like you would be pressing that preemptively if they dashed, which isn't the worst thing, because you can just buffer behind it and still maybe check if they are anti-air, but you see how hard this is. So you just press this and look at the air. You don't have to look at the ground if you're pressing something like this. But it's slow. So if they dash or mask a dash and then dash behind it, it is quite difficult to react to, as you can see. So I feel like crouch jab is probably your best option for checking this and then training your reactions. And then as you get better at it, then maybe you use crouch medium punch to just help you cover the options in a more reliable way. Because basically when you start training this, your anti-airs will progressively get better. And then you'll be able to do that exercise a little bit more easily, and you'll find your own answers for it. But again, if you're struggling with it, and you can see I was struggling with it. It's 2 in the morning when I'm recording this, so I'm quite tired as well. But it's difficult, and it's not easy. Even me, an experienced player, struggles with this stuff. I've seen players of the highest caliber get dashed in on and jumped in on and lose games. because it's very hard to look for both. Dashes in this game are rapid. The priority system helps a lot. What you want to be able to do is find a game plan that helps you to cover both, which is why we're going through neutral here. So that was why I wanted to show off those specific parts of neutral, because I feel like Menat has this rep of being a character that quite literally just does this, and that's it. And like Menat players can't, if you jump at them, they can't do anything, right? And they just auto default to this. But that's not the case, because in this game, with how volatile it is and how many options people have, it can be very difficult to handle everything that they're doing at once. So I feel like if you want to be a good Menat player, you should try to train these different aspects and get them. That's my advice. This is part of like the guide, of course. Like, you may not find this necessary or useful to you, but for me, I feel like this is really important for beginners, as it helps you to train your fundamentals. And especially in the lower ranks, you're gonna notice that people will jump at you a lot. Like, people don't really know how to play on the ground, and much less against Menat on the ground because of her hurt boxes. So they are going to hold up and try to get in on you as quickly as possible. You need to be able to anti-air and be ready for the dash just in case. It goes like that all the way up as you progress. The only thing that changes is that the people that you play against, when they hit you, it will hurt a lot more, because they will optimize their damage, they will optimize their post damage situations. That's why I'm recommending these to you guys early in the beginner stage and not later on in the intermediate stage. Final thing that I want to address is with regard to this neutral is we've looked at this from an orb perspective, but let's now look at this from an orbless perspective. So the same exercises that we just did, where we looked at our anti-airs and our dash checks, we're going to use this now and apply it to what we've done orbless. Because why this is so important, sometimes when you're playing Menat, well, depending on your style, you may get caught without having your orb by your opponent. They may close the space in on you, and it is a huge risk to get it recalled without getting a full jump in or a punish on, right? Because it has a lot of recovery. How do we get this orb back to us safely, or play neutral without the orb? So Menat players usually like to use good poke such as this, because it has a good forward hitbox, and then you can cancel into orb recall, or sweep. But the risk to these is that you still have these cover the ground, but then you have to check the air in case they jump, and these have quite a bit of recovery, so you can't anti-air with your slow anti-airs. So you see here that before we use crouch jab, but we know that this has rest range. We looked at that in the orb normals video, right? We know that these don't have as much range, so we have to now be as ready as ever to check these dashes with our lights, because our mediums and stuff have less range, our heavies have less range, so our lights become our best friend with checking dashes, right? Like, if I said Zeku to dash at me again, you can see that my lights would work, but it's difficult to check otherwise. Like, it's not as easy. So you're going to want to reactively use your lights. And throw my orb out, you're going to want to use your lights again. And what, again, as we showed earlier, lights will give you the ability to, using your lights will give you the ability, I'm sorry, I don't know if I turned it on, alright, will give you the ability to anti-air still, even at worst a trade. So you're going to want to be able to play a neutral that allows you to cover all your options and still be ready for your opponent. So you need to be very aware of how your opponent is planning to approach, and then you need to have your game plan set in your mind. Okay, so he likes to dash, ready to press these buttons. He likes to jump, I'm ready to press these buttons. He's good at mixing up. Okay, I'm going to use this exercise that I practiced before, jabs and anti-air. So those kind of things will come naturally with time. You don't need to be immediately good with them. I'm telling you this because the more you practice it in game and outside of the game in training mode, the quicker you'll pick it up, and it will become second nature to you, which is what you want as a Menat player. You want to be able to cover all these options as second nature, so that you circumvent and you limit the amount of randomness that can happen to you. Because let's be honest, people have to take risks when they're approaching you. They have to dash and jump, right? Especially against a character like Menat'S. So you, as the Menat player, have to then go, okay, second nature to me to be able to jump and anti-air, and now I'm going to look for their character-specific things. Like I said earlier, some characters have other ways of approaching, like dive kicks, runs, command dashes, what EX moves that get them through neutral quicker. Maybe they zone you. You need to be able to have those things on lock, like anti-airing and dash checks, so that you can then start to learn your character-specific things. And I think that's what separates the really good Menat players from the average Menat players. And it's something that I wish for anyone watching this to train. That's my 2 cents on it. I hope you guys find that useful.